Greetings, Commanders, Cerebrats, and Executors. In this episode of the Details of StarCraft subseries, we're going to be talking about shift queuing. So, what I mean by shift queuing is, at its core, very simple. If you issue a command to a unit and then hold down shift and issue another command, the unit will do the second command after the first command. So if I right-click the Marine over here and then hold shift and right-click the Marine over here, the Marine will walk over here and then will walk over here. So right-click, hold shift, right-click, release shift. Marine walks over here and then comes over to the other location that I indicated. Very simple. This is potentially useful when you're scouting. You can say A, left click, hold shift, and the Marine will A move to this location, then to this location. A left click, hold shift, A left click, and the Marine will walk here, and then will walk over to here. This is nice when you're scouting a large area of the map. You can hold shift and right click or A left click your unit to a bunch of different places in succession, and they'll check every one of those locations. But moving your units around with shift queuing is the small stuff. The place that shift queuing is really useful is with buildings. Now, there are some circumstances where you cannot shift queue things. For instance, you cannot shift queue the construction of a building after something else. If I tell this SCV to move over here and then I hold shift, build structure, supply depot, left click over here. The SCV never actually made it to the top of the map where I told him to go. As soon as I issued the command to start building this depot, that command overrode everything else, even though I was holding shift. So you can use shift to queue up movements after other movements, or a move after a moving, things of that kind, but you cannot use shift to queue up building a structure after moving somewhere. The opposite is true though. You cannot use shift to queue up building a structure after moving, but you can use shift to queue up moving after building a structure. I'm just going to turn on the cheat for fast build, demonstrate this. So I'm going to say build a depot here, then move back over here. Build structure, supply depot, left click, hold shift, right click, release shift. So this movement is queued up after building the depot. The SCV builds the depot and comes back over here because I queued up that movement after building the depot. So this is really useful as a Terran player. I've previously talked about Terran buildings require an SCV to sit near the building and work on the building until it's done, and only once it's done is the SCV free to go do something else. You don't want those SCVs who made buildings to be sitting by the building doing nothing. You want them to go back to mining as soon as possible, but it's hard to remember to send all those SCVs back to mining. A better way to do it is to use shift. You tell the SCV to build the building, and then you hold shift and you right-click on the minerals. And that means the SCV will go build the building, and then the SCV will return to the minerals and mine from them. So SCV, build structure, supply depot, left-click, hold shift, right-click the minerals, release shift. The SCV makes the depot, and then once the depot is done, the SCV returns to the minerals and keeps mining, and I did not have to give the SCV any more commands after that initial sequence of commands. I didn't have to remember the depot was being made. I didn't have to remember there was an SCV who I needed to send back to mine. That's extremely valuable, because now I can say SCV, and I'm going to start using hotkeys to do this faster. I introduced hotkeys in the previous episode. I'm going to use hotkeys to actually make the buildings. I can say SCV, build a barracks, left click, hold shift, right click, SCV, build a barracks, hold shift, right click, SCV, build a barracks, hold shift, right click. And now I have SCVs going and building barracks in 3 different positions, and I did that relatively quickly, and I don't have to issue more commands to these SCVs later, and I can go do something else. I can think about other problems that might need my attention in this game. So constructing buildings is one of the operations that you cannot queue up after something else with shift queue. Generally, all movement sorts of operations you can queue up with shift. Move, attack. You can queue those up. But You can queue up movements after making buildings, but you cannot queue up buildings after making movements. Using abilities and casting spells works similarly to making buildings. I can say use a spell, then make this movement, but I cannot say make this movement, then use a spell. This battlecruiser has an ability Yamato Gun. If I say move over here, shift, move over here, the battlecruiser will move to the top, and then we'll move back to where it started. But if I select this battlecruiser and I say move over here, Yamato, hold shift, left click, the battlecruiser never makes it over to this corner that I told it to go to. The Yamato command, the command to use this ability, overwrites anything that was already queued up. Even though I had shift held down, it doesn't queue up the Yamato, it overwrites the existing movements. But I can say Yamato, left click to use Yamato, hold shift, right click here. The battlecruiser will use the Yamato gun ability, kill the Guardian, and then perform the other movement that I had instructed it to perform, which is to go back over here.
Receiving transmission.
So similarly to making buildings, there are plenty of situations where you might want to say, I want to use this ability on this enemy unit, for instance. Use the ability, hold shift, right click. My unit will move over, use the ability, and head back to where it came from, which is a safer position, to help keep it alive. As a Protoss player, you can get similar value out of Shift Q with your buildings. When you're making a building as Protoss, you do not need to have the probe stay by the building while it's constructing. The building will build of its own accord, even if the probe leaves. But if you use Shift Q, you can still command your probe to go make a building and go back to the mining again. And you don't have to wait until the probe arrives at the building and then issue it a new command. If I told this probe to build a pylon up here and I didn't use Shift Q, I'd have to give it the command to make the pylon, and then I go do whatever else I'm going to do for the next few seconds, and then the probe arrives, the pylon starts, and now the probe's doing nothing. And I have to remember this probe is here, select it, and right-click back on the minerals, send it back to mine. But if I use Shift Q, then I can build pylon, hold Shift, right-click on the minerals, and the probe will go back to mining of its own accord. I think I accidentally right-clicked here on the ground in front of the minerals first, so the probe will head to this position first, but then he'll go back to mining. Yeah, there we are. Or select a probe. Similar to what I was doing with the barracks earlier on, I can have a whole bunch of workers queued up to go to particular positions, start buildings, and then come back to mining. I think I messed up with one of these guys. So I can get 3 probes to go out, make buildings, and come back to mining automatically. I never have to issue extra commands to get them to come back to mining. It just happens. And that means I can go and do other things with that time where I would have otherwise been watching my probes run around in my base, because I used Shift to queue up the movement back to mining. So buildings are the main way that Shift Q is really useful. Casting spells is the other big one. If you cast a spell and then issue a command to move somewhere else, I can say, cast this Psy Storm here, hold Shift, right-click here, my Templar will cast a Storm, and we'll move back to the position I indicated. And that can help to keep those spellcasters safe, as an example. So Shift Q, it's not the most game-changing feature in StarCraft, but it is very helpful in a couple of specific situations where nothing else is really very useful.